The vast, endless expanse of space was an unfeeling, cold sea, stretching across the cosmos with no regard for the lives that dared to traverse it. A silence so deep, it felt as if the universe itself had abandoned all sound. But in the heart of this emptiness, where time itself seemed to slow, an anomaly occurred. Something humanity had never expected. A signal. It wasn't the first transmission from deep space. In fact, humanity had intercepted countless signals over the years, each one a puzzle, a whisper from civilizations long gone. Some were curious, others faint and seemingly random. But this one, this signal, was different. It was faint at first, barely detectable, almost as if it were a dying breath from a long-dead star, struggling to survive. But as the Endeavor's sensors locked onto it, the message became undeniable. Something, or someone, was reaching out. Dr. Emma Keller, head of alien communication for the Endeavor project, stared at the data streaming across her console. Her fingers hovered over the keys, eyes wide as she read the results. The signal was too perfect, too deliberate to be a mere accident. This was an SOS, no doubt about it, but not one from any civilization that the galaxy knew. The pattern, frantic, yet calculated, spoke of desperation. The kind of desperation that came with the end of a species, the last hope of survival. She tapped a few more commands into the system, each keystroke increasing the clarity of the signal. The readings came in fast and furious now, revealing fragments of ancient symbols, patterns that resembled nothing like the languages humanity had deciphered from ancient alien texts. This wasn't an automatic distress beacon from a wrecked ship or a forgotten station. It was something much older, much more profound. Emma's mind raced as she analyzed the data. The location of the source, a small star system named HD 189733b, was marked on the star charts, but it was a place humanity had long overlooked. Situated far beyond the outer rim of the known galaxy, it was an area that no one had considered important. No known species lived there, no trade routes passed through. It had been ignored, left to drift in the emptiness, its secrets buried under layers of cosmic dust and gravitational anomalies. But now, that forgotten system had a voice, a cry for help that could no longer be ignored. Emma's heart pounded as she scrolled through the data again. The patterns were becoming clearer. The message was fragmented, distorted by the passage of time. But she could make out some of the symbols. A few were recognizable. An ancient numerical system, long, thought to be extinct. But there was a phrase that lingered in her mind, one that chilled her to the bone. To the survivors, this is your last chance. Escape. You are not alone. She glanced up at her console's chrono. Just over 400 years had passed since the signal was first sent. 4 centuries of drifting silence in the cold, dead space of the galaxy. And yet, it had been found, by pure chance, by humanity's most advanced AI, the one tasked with searching the depths of space for anything remotely worth investigating. It had found the signal. Before Emma could process the weight of the discovery, the door to the lab hissed open. Captain Darren Hayes, the commanding officer of the Endeavor, stepped in, his face as hard as the steel of the ship's hull. His boots echoed on the metallic floor as he approached her station, his eyes narrowing as he saw the data on her screen. "Dr. Keller," he said, his voice low, almost solemn. "What are we looking at?" Emma looked up at him, a flicker of fear passing through her eyes before she quickly masked it with professional resolve. It's an SOS, Captain. But not from any civilization we know. Not from any race we've encountered." He raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but his curiosity was piqued. "How old is it?" "Over 400 years, Emma replied, her voice a mix of disbelief and wonder. "It's old, Captain. And fragmented, yes. But this isn't a random distress signal. This was someone in need of help, someone important." The captain's brow furrowed as he scanned the information again. Could it be an automated signal? Some old distress beacon still active after all this time? Emma shook her head, her expression serious. "No, this is too specific, too intelligent. It's not just a distress signal. It's a plea, a cry for survival. They were trying to warn whoever was left, Whoever found this message. And now, we've found it. Captain Hayes leaned against the console, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Where's it coming from? HD 189733B, Emma said, pointing to the star system's coordinates on the screen. The system was small, unremarkable. At least, that's what the star charts had always suggested. There were no records of any major civilizations in that area, no signs of a thriving empire. It was just a lonely corner of space, untouched by time, its history buried under a cloak of cosmic indifference. But now, it was calling out. Hayes stared at the screen for a moment before pushing himself away from the console. His face was unreadable, but there was something burning in his eyes, an intense focus. Prepare the Endeavor for a reconnaissance mission. We're heading out. Whatever this is, we need to know. Emma nodded, her mind still racing. But Captain, we're not just talking about a lost civilization. This could be a species that lived and died before even the first humans left Earth. A species with technology, knowledge, and answers that could change everything we know about the universe. Hayes's voice was steady, but the weight of his words carried through. And that's why we're going. We need to find out who they were. We need to understand what happened and why they disappeared. The crew had gathered in the briefing room, anticipation in the air. The Endeavor, humanity's pride and joy, its most powerful warship, was about to embark on an unprecedented mission. As the ship's engines roared to life, an energy seemed to fill the air, the hum of the engines vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. The crew was ready. There was no turning back. The unknown had always been a part of human history, a challenge to be met. It had driven humanity to explore the stars, to seek out new worlds and new frontiers. But this was different. This wasn't about charting a new star system or making a first contact. This was about answering a question that had haunted the galaxy for centuries. What happened to the civilization that left behind this final plea for help? The Endeavor's departure was a silent one, as it entered the unknown, its sleek form vanishing into the dark expanse of space. As the crew prepared for their journey, the weight of the mission pressed heavily upon them. For this was not just a rescue operation. It was a journey to uncover the greatest mystery of all. The lost legacy of a civilization that had once stood at the edge of the stars. The Endeavor cut through the cold emptiness of space like a blade through darkness. Its engines hummed with controlled power, a constant reminder of humanity's mastery over technology. Yet even its impressive design seemed insignificant against the vastness that surrounded it. This wasn't a routine patrol or a diplomatic mission. No. This was a search for something that had slipped through the cracks of time, an enigma hidden in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. It was a journey into the unknown, into a place where even the light from distant stars barely reached. Captain Darren Hayes stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the expanse of stars displayed before him. His face was a mask of determination, yet beneath it was a flicker of something else. Unease. The mission had begun without hesitation, but now, as the Endeavor flew deeper into the outer rim, that unease seemed to grow with every passing moment. What awaited them in the system labeled HD 189733B, the faint remnants of a lost civilization, or something more sinister, something that had caused its downfall? Beside him, Dr. Emma Keller worked tirelessly at her station, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. She had devoted her life to the study of alien communication, deciphering messages from civilizations that had vanished long before humanity made its first steps on the moon. But nothing had prepared her for what she was facing now. This signal, this cry for help, was unlike anything she'd encountered. It wasn't a message of a culture seeking to make contact. It was the desperate final plea of a species on the brink of extinction. The very thought of it sent chills down her spine. "We're approaching the system," Emma's voice broke through the stillness of the bridge. Her tone was calm, almost detached, but there was a tension in her words that couldn't be ignored. Hayes nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data streaming across his console. "What do we know about the system so far?" Emma looked up from her console, the flicker of anxiety that crossed her face betraying her calm exterior. Not much. It's located in an area of space where the gravitational forces from surrounding black holes and neutron stars make navigation difficult. No colonies, no known stations. It's a system that's been essentially untouched for millennia. But I've been analyzing the data from the signal. There's something more there. Something hidden. Captain Hayes clenched his jaw. Hidden how? Emma paused for a moment, her fingers pausing above the console. I'm not sure yet. The signal we received, the one that reached us 400 years ago, it's not like anything we've seen before. It's as if the message is encrypted, in layers, each one more intricate than the last. And there's something else. Some sort of interference, as if someone, or something, didn't want us to hear it. Hayes frowned, his mind racing through the implications. A warning? Someone trying to stop us? It's possible, Emma said, her voice taking on a more speculative tone. It's also possible that whatever caused the civilization's fall is still there. If that's true, we might be walking into a trap, or worse. The captain's gaze hardened as he turned to the crew. Prepare for atmospheric entry. We'll begin our search at the outer rim of the system and work our way in. Keep your eyes sharp. We don't know what we'll find. As the Endeavour approached the system, the ship's sensors began to pick up faint signals, scattered, broken, but enough to confirm the presence of some kind of structure. The system itself was a cosmic graveyard, filled with rogue planets, derelict satellites, and the lingering remnants of celestial bodies that had been torn apart by the system's unstable gravitational forces. But amidst this desolation, the faint traces of technology were unmistakable. The Endeavour slowed as it neared the first of these anomalies, a dead planet, its surface scarred by impacts and time. Its once thriving cities were now nothing but ruins, crumbling away under the weight of centuries of neglect. But there, just beneath the planet's surface, an unusual pattern of energy readings flickered to life, a pulsating beacon that seemed to respond to the Endeavour's presence. It was as if the ship had awakened something long dormant. Captain, you need to see this. Emma's voice was urgent yet measured. The energy readings are off the charts. It's not just any old wreck. Something's still down there. Without hesitation, Captain Hayes gave the order for a landing team. A squad of highly trained Marines, led by Sergeant Ian Court, was dispatched to the surface to investigate. Their mission was clear: find the source of the signal, assess the situation, and determine whether it posed a threat. As the Marines descended onto the planet's surface, the atmosphere inside the Endeavour became thick with tension. They landed near a sprawling ruin, a city that had once been a hub of advanced technology and knowledge. Now, it was a graveyard, silent and still. But as the team disembarked, a strange sense of foreboding hung in the air. The planet's surface was littered with the remnants of ancient structures, towering spires of metal and stone, now twisted and bent by time. But amidst the devastation, something shimmered. A structure that didn't belong. It stood in the center of the ruined city, a black obelisk of smooth, unmarked stone, glowing faintly in the low light of the dying sun. It seemed almost alien, out of place, and yet somehow familiar, like something that had been forgotten but was now calling out to them. Sergeant Court approached the structure cautiously, his boots crunching on the fractured earth beneath him. The rest of the squad fanned out, weapons at the ready, scanning the area for any signs of movement. But there was nothing, only the eerie silence of a world long abandoned. As he reached out to touch the obelisk, a low hum began to resonate through the ground beneath him. The air seemed to crackle with static electricity, and the faint glow of the stone pulsed brighter. For a moment, it was as though the planet itself was alive. Alive with the memory of something that had been lost to time. Captain, Court's voice crackled through the comms. You need to see this. We've found something. It's like nothing we've ever encountered. Back on the Endeavour, Emma's eyes widened as the data from the ground team began to flood in. The signal was getting stronger, and the mysterious obelisk seemed to be at the heart of it all. She rushed to her console, analyzing the readings. It's a beacon, she said, her voice trembling. But not like anything we've seen before. It's ancient, and it's responding to the ship's presence. It's almost like it's been waiting for us. The team on the surface continued to investigate, unaware of the growing danger. The hum from the obelisk was getting louder, resonating through the air, vibrating in their bones. It was as though someone, was about to wake up. The vibration that rippled through the ground was no mere tremor. It carried a strange resonance that reached into the minds of those present, stirring images and emotions they could not explain. Sergeant Court instinctively tightened his grip on his rifle, his training kicking in as he scanned the area for any threat. Yet there was nothing tangible, nothing visible. Only that low, haunting hum that grew louder with each passing second. Around him, his squad shifted nervously, their helmets betraying slight flickers of hesitation. These were soldiers trained for the unknown. Yet something about this place, this moment, gnawed at the core of their instincts. Above the planet, aboard the Endeavor, Captain Hayes leaned forward in his command chair, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrests. Every fiber of his being screamed caution. Yet the mission demanded answers. Dr. Keller's console flooded with data, streams of alien code, patterns of energy emissions, and pulse signals that defied known scientific models. Her heart raced as she parsed through the information, her mind grappling with the realization that what they were witnessing was not simply a relic of a bygone civilization. It was a living system, an artifact not of death, but of dormant, latent purpose. The obelisk, now fully awakened, began to emit an eerie light that spilled across the shattered ruins like a mist. It illuminated the broken walls and toppled towers, with an unearthly glow, revealing inscriptions and markings that had been invisible to the naked eye. The language was indecipherable, but the intent was unmistakable. Warnings, layered atop each other, desperate and urgent, as though the architects of this forgotten world had tried to shout across the ages. Sergeant Court's comm crackled again as he reported in, his voice taut with tension. "Captain, the obelisk is... it's transmitting. It's sending something, some kind of signal, but not outward. It's going down into the planet itself." Hayes exchanged a grim look with Dr. Keller. If the signal was being directed into the planet, it meant that what they were dealing with wasn't just above the surface. It was rooted deep within the very bones of the world. The implications were staggering. Was it an ancient defense system? A containment protocol? Or worse, a prison? Dr. Keller leaned over her console, her mind racing faster than her fingers could move. The signal structure was intricate, fractal-like, and impossibly elegant. It wasn't random. It was designed to interface. With what? She could only guess. She felt a gnawing pit of dread begin to form in her stomach, as she realized that the transmission was not simply reactivating the obelisk. It was awakening an entire network, an interconnected system that sprawled deep beneath the surface of the planet. Back on the ground, Court's squad moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the newly revealed symbols and structures. Then, without warning, the earth beneath them shuddered violently. Cracks split open the ground with a deafening roar, and from the depths below, colossal structures began to rise, platforms of alien alloy and crystalline towers that defied human understanding. It was as if the planet itself was unfolding, revealing a hidden face that had slumbered beneath layers of dust and ruin. The Marines scrambled to stabilize themselves as the ancient city transformed before their eyes. Where there had once been rubble and silence, there was now a breathtaking and terrifying display of alien technology activating in concert. Energy fields sprang to life, crackling with a bluish light, forming pathways, walls, and barriers that shifted and reformed like a living organism. The obelisk at the heart of it all pulsed brighter, its rhythm steady, deliberate, almost like a heartbeat. Sergeant Court barked orders, pulling his squad into a defensive perimeter around the obelisk. He could feel it now. Not just the vibration, but a low, persistent pressure in his mind, like a whisper at the edge of hearing. It wasn't words exactly, but impressions. A great sadness, a desperate urgency, a warning wrapped in mourning. He shook his head to clear it, focusing on the immediate danger. "Captain," Court said over the comms, his voice rough with strain, "this isn't just some artifact. It's a system that's waking up, and we have no idea what it's capable of." On the Endeavor, Hayes made a split-second decision. Pull back to the ship, now. We need to regroup and analyze what we're dealing with. But before Court could respond, the obelisk emitted a final, blinding flash of light, and the world around them changed completely. Gone were the crumbling ruins and empty sky. In their place stood a vibrant city, teeming with life, bustling with forms that shimmered with iridescent energy. The squad staggered back, weapons raised instinctively, but their scopes and sensors reported nothing tangible. It was not real. It was a projection, a memory etched into the very fabric of the city. They watched in awe and horror as the holographic city played out scenes of a civilization at the height of its power, striding titans of intellect and science, crafting wonders beyond human comprehension. But intertwined with the images were darker scenes, desperate meetings in towering halls, frantic construction of massive war machines, and finally, the rise of a colossal entity, a being not born of flesh or machine, but something else entirely. Something they had created and then lost control of. The final scenes were the most chilling. The entity, now corrupted and monstrous, turning on its creators, laying waste to their great cities, devouring knowledge and life alike in a torrent of annihilation. The last images were of the obelisks, the only things capable of sealing it away, burying it deep within the planet's core, and locking the keys behind layers of encryption and forgotten time. As the vision faded, the Endeavor's crew and the Marines were left standing in silence, the weight of what they had just witnessed sinking into their bones. Emma's voice, soft and shaken, broke the silence. They didn't just die out. They fought, and they lost. And whatever they sealed away, it's still here, waiting. Captain Hayes stared at the black obelisk, now silent once more, and felt a cold certainty settle over him. They had awakened, something ancient and terrible. And now, there would be no turning back. The silence after the vision collapsed was deafening, so profound that even the wind seemed afraid to move. Sergeant Court stood rigid, his muscles locked in place, his mind struggling to reconcile the impossible images seared into his memory. Around him, his squad shifted uneasily, exchanging nervous glances through their helmet visors. No one spoke. No one dared to disturb the heavy atmosphere pressing down on them. It was as if the very planet was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. High above, aboard the Endeavor, Captain Hayes stared at the tactical displays, their readouts now littered with anomalies that defied explanation. Energy surges, gravitational distortions, even subtle shifts in the planet's magnetic field. It was as if an ancient heartbeat, long dormant, had resumed its dreadful rhythm. Dr. Keller's fingers flew across her console, pulling data from every available sensor, her brow furrowed in concentration. The information didn't just suggest danger, it screamed it. The planetary core itself was showing signs of activity, fluctuations that could only be explained by the presence of some vast, unnatural power buried deep within. As Hayes absorbed the implications, a grim clarity settled over him. They hadn't just stumbled upon a relic. They had triggered a resurrection. Whatever force those long-forgotten architects had imprisoned beneath the crust of this world was awakening, roused by the careless curiosity of humanity. And there was no guarantee it would remain contained. Down on the surface, the Marines' comms crackled with bursts of static as the newly reactivated structures continued to reshape the ruined city. Walls of shimmering light rose around them, forming intricate patterns that pulsed with a rhythm eerily in sync with the obelisk's faint thrum. The air itself grew thicker, charged with unseen energies that prickled at their skin through their suits. The obelisk no longer stood alone. It had become the heart of a growing network, a nexus of alien technology reviving itself with deliberate, methodical precision. Sergeant Court's instincts screamed for him to retreat, but duty chained him to the ground. He could not leave this thing unchecked. His voice was steady when he opened the channel to the Endeavor. "Captain, we need an immediate evac. This place is going hot, and fast." "Copy that," Hayes replied. "Shuttles inbound. Hold your position until extraction." But even as the words left his mouth, the ground beneath the squad trembled again. This time not with the slow, pulsing awakenings of before, but with the violent, chaotic fury of something forcing its way to the surface. Cracks spiderwebbed outward from the base of the obelisk, and from these wounds in the earth, dark shapes began to emerge. At first, they appeared almost metallic, gleaming in the strange light. But as they rose higher, it became clear that they were not machines in the traditional sense. Their forms shifted and writhed, blurring the line between organic and synthetic. Towering figures with elongated limbs and faceless heads, their bodies laced with veins of pulsing energy, like living conduits of the planet's own lifeblood. They moved with a terrifying fluidity, their steps silent, their presence oppressive. Dr. Keller's analysis confirmed the worst fears. These beings were not remnants. They were constructs designed for a singular purpose: containment. They were the jailers, built to patrol and suppress the ancient entity trapped within the planet's core. But with the system disrupted, their programming twisted by untold millennia of dormancy, they no longer recognized humanity as anything but an intrusion to be eradicated. Sergeant Court didn't wait for orders. "Weapons free!" he barked, and a chorus of gunfire erupted, the sharp cracks of human rifles slicing through the thick, charged air. The bullets tore into the nearest construct, but to Court's horror, they had little effect. The rounds ricocheted off its shifting armor, sparks flashing as the creature continued its inexorable advance. It raised an arm, and from its palm, a lance of searing energy erupted, cutting a smoking trench through the ground and narrowly missing one of the Marines. "Fall back! Form a perimeter around the obelisk," Court ordered, adrenaline sharpening his senses to a razor's edge. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. The constructs moved with uncanny speed, weaving through the ruins with predatory grace. The Marines adapted quickly, targeting joints and exposed energy nodes, but for everyone that fell, 2 more seemed to rise from the depths. It became clear that this was not a battle they could win through firepower alone. The obelisk had not simply called them forth. It had awakened the planet's defenses, a relentless army with a singular purpose. On the Endeavor, Captain Hayes made a snap decision. "Initiate orbital strike protocols," he commanded. "We can't let whatever's down there break free." The ship's crew hesitated. An orbital strike so close to their own personnel was unthinkable under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances. Dr. Keller nodded grimly. "If we don't, the entity they sealed away will rise again. And this time, there will be no one left to stop it." In orbit, the ship's weapons systems aligned, targeting solutions locked onto the heart of the ruined city. In the midst of the chaos, a lone Marine's voice crackled over the comms, filled with both awe and terror. "Captain, it's not just this planet. The obelisk. It's sending signals off-world. It's calling to others." A chill ran through Hayes's blood. If there were more obelisks, more prison worlds, then humanity had stumbled into a galactic nightmare long buried and long forgotten. A hidden war fought by ancient powers, their weapons of containment now fraying under the weight of eons. The countdown to the orbital strike began. Sergeant Court, battered and bloodied, glanced up at the sky, seeing the faint glimmer of the Endeavor. Against the stars. He knew what was coming. He keyed his comms one last time. "Do it, Captain. Don't hesitate." And with that, the heavens themselves began to burn. The first strike came like the wrath of an ancient god, a lance of incandescent plasma tearing through the atmosphere with a roar that shredded the very air apart. The night turned to day as the beam made contact with the surface, a colossal explosion blooming outward from the heart of the ruined city. A shockwave of raw, searing energy ripped across the landscape, vaporizing ancient structures, toppling monolithic walls, and reducing the strange, resurrected constructs to fragments of smoldering ash. It was beautiful in a terrible, apocalyptic way. The culmination of humanity's most devastating technologies unleashed in a desperate gambit to snuff out the reborn threat. Sergeant Court and his surviving Marines threw themselves to the ground, clutching the shattered earth as the fury of the orbital strike consumed the battlefield. The heat was unbearable even through their reinforced armor, and the very ground seemed to writhe beneath them, as if the planet itself recoiled from the assault. Dust and debris filled the air, turning the world into a choking, blinding hellscape. Court gritted his teeth, feeling the vibrations rattling through his bones, the roar so deafening it became a physical force pressing against his body. Somewhere through the chaos, he caught fleeting glimpses of the constructs, their forms unraveling in the blast, disintegrating like smoke scattered before a hurricane. Yet as the energy ebbed, and the first echoes of silence returned. A horrifying truth emerged from the haze. The obelisk still stood, scarred and cracked, its surface blackened in places, but undeniably intact. And worse, its glow had intensified. What had been a slow, pulsing thrum was now a rapid staccato beat, like the racing heart of something cornered and enraged. From its fractured surface, tendrils of raw energy lashed outward, gouging deep scars into the earth, seeking, probing, growing. Aboard the Endeavor, Captain Hayes slammed a fist against the armrest of his command chair. "Focus fire," he barked. "Concentrate everything on the obelisk." The ship's batteries unleashed a second barrage, an unrelenting cascade of plasma bolts, kinetic penetrators, and high-frequency gravitic beams. The ground convulsed under the relentless bombardment, entire sections of the city crumbling into fiery chasms. The atmosphere above the site shimmered with the intensity of the assault, forming auroras of unnatural colors, brilliant greens, violent reds, deep blues so dark they seemed almost to absorb the surrounding light. Still, the obelisk endured. Down below, Quart's HUD flickered as the electromagnetic chaos scrambled their systems. Through the static, he saw his squad struggling to regroup, their armor scorched and battered. Private Sato pulled another Marine from beneath a fallen slab of alien stone, her hands trembling from exertion. Corporal Reyes, his rifle nearly melted. From the heat, scavenged ammunition from a fallen comrade. There was no order now, no strategy, only survival. Then, with a sound that transcended the material, the obelisk unleashed its true defense. A wave of energy erupted from its core, not heat, not force, but something deeper, something that bypassed armor and flesh alike to claw directly at the mind. Quart felt it like a knife driven into his thoughts. Visions of endless blackness, of vast predatory things stirring beyond the edges of reality, of entire civilizations burning away into nothingness. He gasped, his body convulsing as he fought against the alien intrusion. Around him, some Marines dropped their weapons and screamed. Others collapsed, clutching at their helmets, trying in vain to block out the invasion. The constructs, those few that remained, rose anew, reinvigorated. By the obelisk's dark song, their broken forms reknitting with grotesque efficiency. They moved with greater speed now, as if the obelisk had shed its final constraints and unleashed them in their purest, most lethal form. Captain Hayes saw it too, from orbit. The way the obelisk's emissions were beginning to distort even space, itself around the planet. Gravitational anomalies spiked, threatening to tear apart the Endeavor if they intensified further. If they failed to destroy it here and now, it could cascade into a catastrophic event that might destabilize not just the planet, but the system itself. The obelisk was no simple prison. It was a failsafe. And now that failsafe was entering its final stage. Dr. Keller, her voice tight with desperation, transmitted a final recommendation to the captain. Detonate the ship's core. Self-destruction of the Endeavor would release a singularity, a collapsing mass that might, just might, tear the obelisk into a dimensional rift and bury it forever. It was madness. It was sacrifice. But it was their only remaining option. Captain Hayes's fingers hovered over the authorization codes, his mind racing through every consequence. The faces of his crew flashed before his eyes, the hundreds of souls aboard who had trusted him, with their lives. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, before opening them with renewed resolve. "This is the captain," he said over the ship-wide comms. "Prepare for final protocol. It's been an honor." The crew responded with grim determination, no hesitation, no fear. They understood. Humanity had always been willing to sacrifice for a future worth living in. Down on the planet, Sergeant Quart saw the Endeavor shift in orbit, positioning itself directly above the obelisk. He knew what it meant. There would be no second chances. He forced himself to his feet, rallying what remained of his squad. If they were going to die, they would die fighting, not cowering. He raised his rifle once more, the weapon battered and cracked but still lethal. "For humanity," he roared, and the Marines joined his cry, their voices cutting through the despair like a blade. As the Endeavor's engines flared one final time, powering the singularity drive into overload, the heavens above grew impossibly bright. And then, in a single blinding instant, fire and darkness consumed the world. The shockwave of the Endeavor's self-destruction rippled outward with a fury no natural force could ever match, tearing apart the very fabric of reality around the obelisk. From orbit, distant probes captured a final image, a sphere of collapsing light, pulling the twisted city, the constructs, the obelisk, and everything nearby into a singularity that screamed as it devoured itself. The massive gravitational distortion shredded the upper atmosphere, drawing in clouds, dust, and even fragments of the shattered landscape before sealing itself in a final flash of pure, cold darkness. Then, silence. The surface of the planet was left a scarred wasteland, a dead, smoldering ruin beneath a sky that flickered and twisted with residual gravitational echoes. Where once stood an ancient terror, there was now only a great circular crater, smooth, glassed, and utterly lifeless. No monuments, no walls, no obelisks. Only the faint whisper of winds coursing over the broken land, carrying with them the ghostly ashes of a battle that would never be remembered by those who lived beyond this system. Yet, against all odds, from the ruins near the crater's edge, movement stirred. Sergeant Court, his armor cracked and blackened, pulled himself from a shallow ditch where he had been thrown by the blast. His every muscle screamed in protest, and the very air seemed thick, heavy with the residual gravity flux. His HUD was dark, communications were dead. Around him, a handful of other Marines were doing the same, bruised, battered, but alive. He staggered upright, coughing, his body aching with every step. Their numbers were a shadow of what they had been, less than a squad's worth. But they had survived the end of the world. Court looked toward the sky, where the stars shone brightly once more, untainted by the obelisk's malign influence. No alien constructs moved, no unnatural energies stirred. Only the wide, endless quiet of a universe reset. Keller's voice, faint and crackling through a short-range emergency channel, reached his ears. "Sergeant, status?" Court allowed himself a grim, exhausted smile. "Alive," he rasped. Mostly, it wasn't victory in the traditional sense. No one would sing songs of this battle. No medals would be awarded. No monuments would be erected in their name. Humanity's great warship, the Endeavor, was gone. Hundreds of lives had been extinguished in the blink of an eye to ensure the safety of countless billions who would never know the cost. And yet, that was humanity's strength, an unwavering defiance even in the face of annihilation. A willingness to bear the unbearable to protect the future. Court knew the history books might mark this planet as an unexplored world, unworthy of further study. The obelisk's existence would be buried under layers of classification and silence. But he and the others would carry the memory of what they had faced and what they had destroyed, forever etched into their bones. In the days that followed, the surviving Marines scavenged what they could from the wreckage. Emergency beacons were repaired, and a long-range transmission was finally sent. A simple message encoded in a battered transponder. Threat neutralized. Survivors requesting extraction. When a rescue vessel finally arrived, days later, the crew, who descended, found the survivors hardened beyond anything training could prepare for. Their eyes carried the weight of those who had faced something far older, far more terrible than the galaxy would ever understand, and prevailed. As they lifted, off, leaving the ruined planet behind, Sergeant Court watched the scorched landscape disappear beneath the clouds. A part of him stayed behind, buried with the obelisk and the dark secrets it had guarded. But he also knew that humanity would endure. Always. Above the crater, where no stars had dared shine during the obelisk's reign, the constellations now burned bright once more. Silent witnesses to a sacrifice that had kept the darkness at bay, and so humanity marched forward, scarred but unbroken, forever ready to meet the unknown with fire, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. Because in the end, it wasn't the obelisks, the ancient threats, or the forgotten gods that defined the fate of worlds. It was the indomitable heart of humanity, always.